Bueno. Right, let's see. Oh, there are participants. Hold on. Okay. Oh, good morning, Naftali. Somebody whose name is iPhone. Oh, Moshe Druin.
Good morning.
Z Herschel.
Morning.
Hi, and Mr. iPhone, whoever that is, without a name. Okay. All right. Hold on here. Okay. Rabbi Smith asked me to do two dafs, 27, 37 and 38. And if you take a look at them, they're like, you can't make them any longer. I think I don't know, I must have been a bad boy. He punished me. I don't know if I can get through them all. Obviously, the less questions, the easier it'll be for me, but the less you really know or understand. So you might have to be, in fact, you probably will have to be closer, review this stuff on your own, but I'll do my best to at least go as far as we can in an hour and a half. Let's start with the last two lines on 36, which actually the rabbi read, but that's the beginning of the subject. So it starts off with the last word on the last line of 36b, my prosbul. What's the meaning of prosbul? Amarav, so Amarav Chisda says, prosbule ubute. Rav Chisda says it means the benefit of the bule, which is the rich, and the bule. Now, when you just look at the word, obviously prosbul, you can see is a amalgam or whatever you want to call it, acronym of the benefit pro bule, the bull, all right, or bule, and bule are rich. So Rav Chisda actually adds in something here that he adds to, even though we call it a prosbul, he says ubute, which is the poor. All right, let's go to the next page. All right, and if it doesn't say anything in there, I will help you. All right, Bule elu ashirim. Bule, these are the rich people, because he quotes, "V'shavarti es gaon uzchem," is written, and I will break the pride of your might. The son of Rav Yosef, elu bulos, and Rav Yosef learns there, these are the bulos of Yehuda. This refers to the rich in Judea. The Gemara continues, Bute Elohani, and Bute, these are the poor. Again, going by explaining what Rav Chisda added in extra. Dechtiv Harvei Tavitenu, see the shorish, the root of the word there is very similar. As is written concerning a poor person, you should lend him. Well, we've got some problems with holding things here, so deal with me here. The Gemara continues its explanation of the word prosbul. Amalei Rebbe Leuza. Rebbe said to a foreigner, who mentioned the word prosbul while conversing in his language? My prosbul. So the foreigner, I guess, must have mentioned it. And he said, what is a prosbul? What is the meaning of the prosbul, which I heard you mention? Amalei Porsid the Milsa. The foreigner answered him, in my language, it means the adjustment of the matter. Now, the adjustment of the matter, I'm not sure what that means, but no, you don't have to answer. It basically means, in my mind, and if I'm wrong, then bring it in, please, is that the whole concept here is that prior to Shemitah, a rich person is not going to want, perhaps, to loan the poor person money, because even he loans him because it's a mitzvah, right? But he doesn't want it because he's saying, wait a minute, I'm going to get over on Shemitah, because Shemitah abolishes all loans. So I don't want to loan anybody any money on Shemitah, all right? It's just not going to work, all right? And so therefore we need some kind of incentive that the Beis Din would do to make it pro for the rich. So what was the incentive? This document called a prosbul, all right, that says, guess what? Don't worry, you could still loan the money, because we're going to make sure that you will benefit from being able to get your money back, because the prosbul will let you transfer any debts that are owed to you to the Beis Din, and by the law of eminent domain, the Beis Din can collect anything it wants, and Shemitah doesn't even stop it. And why, according to Rav Chisda, where is it benefiting the poor? Well, that's obvious, because the poor still can go get money, because they need money for shelter and food, and if ain't nobody going to lend it to them, where they going to get it from? All right. The Gemara cites a law concerning prosbul. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Yisam ain't tzrichen prosbul. What? So the Gemara says an orphan doesn't need a prosbul? What are you king? I hear we're supposed to protect orphans, etc., etc. But think of Batman, think of Bruce Wayne, who was a ward of the state. Okay, who protects orphans? The Beis Din. If the Beis Din protects orphans, then obviously, what do you even need a document called a prosbul to protect the orphan? The orphan himself is already protected by the Beis Din. It's like a redundancy. So it says orphans do not need a prosbul. V'chein tani Rabbi Bar Chama Yisam ain't tzrichen prosbul, and so the Rabbi Bar Chama teach a brisa. Orphans do not need a prosbul. The Rabban Gamliel Beis Dino Abi and Shal Yisamin, because Rabban Gamliel, who is the head of the court, and his court are the patrons of the orphans. Okay, so all the orphans are wards of the Beis Din, and therefore they don't need prosbuls. Or not, they don't need prosbuls. The person who lending to the poor, to the Yisomim, do not need a prosbul because they already have it guaranteed. It's got more than the guarantee. It has a what's it called when you go to a bank and they have this stamp that's like more than the notary. It's no, it's yeah. Well, there's this very special stamp now. I forget what it's called. I had to go through it, those several documents. But in other words, it's guaranteed by the court. Tanan Hasom, we learned there in the Mishnah, Ein Kosvin Prisbo El Harakaka. So now we're getting into prosbul, and we define a little bit better. When can you make this guarantee? All right, the Beis Din will guarantee the promissory note. The borrower must own a piece of land, because the Beis Din has to go, and because this is essentially an unsecured loan, has to kind of turn it into a secured loan by having something with which it could later on go sell if it had to get the money, to return the money to or sell the land to the lender. All right, the creditor. So enkus in prosbul el karka, we write a prosbul only on the basis of land that the borrower has backing his debt. So the borrower might say, he's cash poor. He doesn't have a dollar. He doesn't have a penny. But he owns a house that's $10 million. He owns acres of land. He owns all these things. All right. So the person who's going to lend him do the cash advance to give him money is giving the cash advance based on, even though it's unsecured, on the Beis Din as prosbul, because the Beis Din knows I can still grab his land, law of eminent domain, and then pay the guy back. All right. Im ein lo mizacheo b'toch sadeo koshu. If he does not have any land, this is interesting. What if the borrower doesn't have any land, but he still wants a prosbul? The creditor still wants some sort of a guarantee from the Beis Din. Look at this. The lender, which is a creditor, grants him ownership of any amount of land in his own hands. So here, this balabus, Mr. Monopoly, says, you know what? I understand you want $10,000 from me. And I understand you don't own even a pot. And you don't own any land to put the pot on. All right. But I will give you a piece of my land. Now you own land. The loophole. Now that you own land, Beis Din can write me a prosbul that says they'll guarantee the loan. Because Beis Din will only guarantee a loan for somebody who has a piece of land. And even though you don't own it, I'm lending you my piece of land. Now you have it. Interesting. All right. The kama koshahu, How much is any amount? So everywhere in the Gemara, we always talk about the kezayis, kibetza. There's got to be amounts in the Gemara. What's the least amount of land? Rav Chia Barashi, Amarav. So he says, afilu kelach shel kruv, even as little as the size of a cabbage stalk. So imagine a cabbage is growing on the ground, right, Professor? It's only got a tiny little stalk in the ground, and they cut the stalk, that little stump and the ground under it, that's good enough. So how much would you say that is? 3 inches, 2 inches, of land? Professor? One cabbage, no, the stalk. Just that's like nothing, right? It's like a minimum amount. 100 acres. I'm having a hard enough time teaching this. Don't teach me. The Gemara adds that it is not even necessary to transfer actual ownership of the small piece of land to the borrower. All right. So he doesn't have to transfer it. It's just the fact that it's his. Now they'll go into detail on that. Rav Yehuda, afilo hishil lo makam l'sano ulechirayim. Even if he lent the borrower a place in his land to put his oven and range. So if you think about sometimes when you're driving along 163rd Street, and I don't know if they still have it, but let's say the food truck, but it used to be that there was a guy with a big black wrought iron like furnace, and they used to sell some kind of food on it. You smell it, and they'd have, I don't know, corn or potatoes or tray stuff. And it was on the gasoline stations piece of land or something. All right. He didn't own that land. I don't know if he rented it, but that's kind of the owner of the land, or in this case, the creditor, is just giving him a little piece of his land for him to go and put his oven on it. Once he's done that, and the oven's on that piece of land, he can now write or have written the prosbo on it. And I meant to bring the prosbo in, I didn't, but I'm sure you can look it up on Wikipedia or ask any Rav to show you what it looks like. But when we do, what do you call it, Hataras Nedarim, before, on the year of Shemitah, right before Shemitah, we do it always by Rosh Hashanah time, whatever. So I remember that on the years right before Shemitah or starting Shemitah, we always add a prosbo to that in the statement. And it's a very small statement, but and I don't know if it's all document or it's just a statement offhand. But Daf Yomi is not a halacha shir. You can look up the exact words in prosbo. Vatnan, hilo and wait, Vahatnan, is this so? Hilo in? Hilo in. Eine kosting prosbo ela al atzitz nakov govad, but the Amora Hillel. So this is not talking about the Tana Hillel number 1, year 0. This is talking about one of the Amorim, the later rabbis, whose name was Hillel also. He taught the Brisa, which states a prosbo can only be written on the basis of a perforated plot. Okay, so I know I'm just showing this here. Jonathan pulled this up. This is a handwritten prosbo. It's obviously a relatively long document. Well, it's old because that's old. The new one might be printed with AI chat GPT, whatever. I know. All right. ABC GFG. All right. So it can only be written on the perforated pot. So what does that mean, the perforated pot? So if you think of it, and we've learned this in the past, when you have a pot, if there's a perspiration, typically, and it's on the ground, what's growing in the pot, the roots end up eventually going through into the ground. So even though the plant is in the pot, it's really growing in ground, which means now you have a little piece of ground. So that's statement 1 to 1. Nakav in, sheno nakav lo. So we can infer from that, if the pot is perforated, yes, a prosbo can be written. But on the basis of a pot that's not perforated, a prosbo may not be written. And that's where the roots are going round and round and round in the pot because they have nowhere to go. And when you pull it out, you see this kind of circular root pattern. Right? The Gemara concludes its question. Why not? But there is its place. Why does the ground on which the borrower has the right to place his unperforated pot not constitute the landholding? You just said he can put his oven there, and that constitutes a landholding. Why is the pot no good? It's a good question at this point. The Gemara answers, "Lo tzricha demanach asikhe." No, it refers to where the pot rests on pegs rather than on the ground itself. So you go into what do you call it? What's the store next to Marshall's that sell, or part of Marshall's that sells all the tchotchkes? Home goods. The other half of Marshall's. They sell all these pots and all these other things, this and that. So they sell these pot stands. So it's usually wrought metal, and the pot sits in it, and then it's got prongs to go down his legs. So that's what he's referring to here. In other words, that pot is on the prong, and only prongs, and the only thing that's on the land is these few prong legs that's standing on there. And in that case, perhaps, just like a kazayas is not a kibetza, this amount that's standing on the land is not considered enough to make the connection to the land of the pot. The Gemara records, Rav Ashi matnei lei gidma de dilka. Rav Ashi transferred ownership of a date palm stump to his debtor, the kaseva leha presbo. All right, a lot of times you go to this neighborhood, you see palm trees that have been cut down, but they still haven't paid for the stump grinders who charge a lot of money, more usually than the person who chops down the tree to grind up the stump. It's true, if you ever check it out. It's like $500 to grind a stump, but cut down the tree. Comes here, give me $50. Cuts it and drops it on the side. All right. So he went and he said, "See this stump that's over here?" He says, "I transfer ownership of this area of the stump." All right. And based on that, he wrote the presbo. Again, why we keep on mentioning this? Because the presbo that's written for the benefit of both the rich man, who's the creditor, the lender, and the borrower, who's the poor man must own a piece of land or some equivalent, as we've mentioned above, to a piece of land, so that basting can then go right to presbo. The Gemara records another ruling. Rabbanan devei Rav Ashi masrei milayhu. The rabbis studying in the academy of Rav Ashi would submit their words to one another. This is really cool. There used to be a story, it was very old, about two guys who they knew, they would tell jokes to each other, and they knew all the jokes by heart already, so they gave them all numbers, like this was joke number. So instead of telling the joke, one guy would go to the other, 3, and the guy would 48, 22, 21. The guy wouldn't live. Why didn't you live? You say you didn't tell her right. So the thing is, here they're saying in this yeshiva, the Rabbs didn't even have to give a prosbu. They'd simply declare the formula stated in the prosbu before an impromptu court composed of a number of their colleagues, and therefore orally submit their debts to them. So this is kind of an oral prosbu. Very interesting. Rav Yonatan Masa Milad Rav Chia Bar Abba. Rav Yonatan submitted his words to Rav Chia Bar Abba. Amalei Shrich Nami Deyachwina. Yonatan then said to him, "Do I need anything else? As you have my word." It's like it's better than the handshake there. It's just my word. Amalei Lo Tzricha. I don't need anything else. Your word is as good as a piece of land and the presbo can be read. Woo! Pretty interesting. Your oral submission of debts to me takes the place of a presbo, right? So they didn't even write a presbo; it took the place of the presbo. All right. The Gemara presents a brisa dealing with the presbo's land requirements. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught the brisa, "Ein lo karka," if the borrower has no land. Again, similar to all the previous situations. V'la orev yesh lo karka, but the guy who is the guarantor. This is now, look, now we're not just dealing with the creditor who's the lender and the borrower, but now we have like, what do you call it here that lends money? The gemach, my gemach. Here we have a third person in the triangle. He says, don't worry, I'll underwrite the loan. And I'm a big landowner, Orev. So the Orev is the owner, the guarantor, who's essentially the underwriter. He has land. Kosvin alav prosbo. So we can now write a prosbo on the basis of it. So this is like a novelty. So even though the borrower has no land, even though the lender has not given or lended any land to the borrower to call it land, it's still as if he had land because he has a guarantor for his loan that has land. It's very cool. All right. But the one indebted to him does have land. Kosvin alav prisbo with the Rabbi Nassan, who may write a prisbo on the basis of it to a teaching of Rabbi Nassan. By the way, he might not be such a benevolent guy, the third guy. He might actually owe, let's say, this Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Shimon is borrowing $100 for Reuven. Reuven, what do you call it, says, well, I want a presbo. And he said, well, I have no land. He says, well, wait a minute. Levi owes me $100. And Levi owns land. So therefore, if I don't pay up, you can always go to Levi and get, he's like essentially my underwriter, because if you owe to me and me owe to you, you can get from you. Yeah. It's like a triangle. And I love triangle or land triangle. Right? The Gemara cites the teaching of Nassan referred to by the Brisa. For it was taught in the Brisa, Rabbi Nassan Omer, Minayin lenose lenoshe bechavero mana. From where in scripture can we derive that if one has a claim of a mana against his fellow, the chavero bechavero, and a fellow in turn has a claim of a mana against his fellow, he's quoting a case that's similar to what I just said. There is three people involved. From where can we derive that we take the mana from the last one, the debtor's debtor, all right, that was Levi in this case, and give it directly to this first one, Reuven, the original creditor. Talmud Loma, Benasan, Shia, Asham Lo. For the Torah states, and he shall give it to the one to whom he is guilty. Interesting words. I'm not going to go into reading about, but it gives an okay on that in the Torah from learning out that. The Gemara cites a Mishnah pertaining to a Shemitah's cancellation of debts. All right, and it's good because all along, why we were talking about presbyls, because we're worried about Shemitah, and Shemitah is going to cancel a debt, but we haven't really mentioned any Mishnahs that have to do with Shemitah. So finally, Tanu Tznan Hasam, we learned here in the Mishnah, Hashvias Mishametes es Milva. The seventh year cancels a loan. Uh-oh. If the seventh year cancels a loan, how is the the creditor who's loaning the money going to get it back from the borrower? Bein bishtar, bein shelo bishtar, whether the loan is recorded in a note or not recorded in a note. So it gives the initial impression in this Mishnah that presbyl ain't going to help nothing, because with a note or without a note. But we have to learn more. Amoraim disagree as to how to understand this Mishnah. Rav Shmuel the Amru Tavayo, Rav and Shmuel both say, listen to what they both say here. Bishtar shtar yesh bo achrayas. Bishtar shtar yesh bo achrayas nechasim. That the Mishnah's expression in a note refers to a loan recorded note in which there is a provision for a lien on real property, which is essentially what we've been talking about all along. So what does it mean, shelo bishtar? That he can't, in other words, he's going to lose the debt. Shelo bishtar shein bo achrayas nechasim. And the Mishnah's expression, not recorded in the note, refers to a loan recorded in the note in which there is no provision for a lien on real property. So essentially, if you interpret it this way, this Mishnah is supporting what we've learned so far. All right? In either case, the Shemitah cancels the debt. Kol shekain milva al peh. And certainly, Shemitah cancels an oral loan that was not recorded in the note altogether. Well, then what we do with the last thing we just said with the Rabbeim. Rabbi Yonah. So now let's see what Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish say. The Amru Tabayo, they both said, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, all right, they're agreeing, all right, which is interesting because Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochis are the two who are usually learning together in Eretz Yisrael, early stage of Muram, and they're arguing. And here they're both agreeing, all right? And Rabbi Shmuel, same generation basically, with the early Amoram in Bavel, and they're usually arguing. Rab says this, Shmuel says this, and which way do we hold? All right, but they agreed on their statement. So for one thing, it's very interesting. They're both very strong in their statements that the people who typically argue with each other are not even arguing about. So what do they say? They say, so they say, what is a shtar? They say a shtar. Whoops, hold on a second. Let's move this around. A shtar is in a note, refers to a note which there is no provision for a lien on real property. So they actually say shtar is referring to the second type shtar of Rav and Shmuel. All right, shelo b'shtar milva peh. And what does not a note mean? That means when it's an oral note. All right, and the Mishnah's expression, not recorded note, refers to an oral loan. So they are really disagreeing. All right, in either case, Shemitah cancels the debt, according to. But the lender does not relinquish a loan recorded note in which there is a provision for a lien on real property. So they're not really totally disagreeing. The second set, which was Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, they still agree that if there is land that protects, that makes the prosbu and protects Shemitah from being mishamit. Good way to remember it. Shemitah mishamit. In other words, Shemitah gets rid of getting rid of the loan. All right? But that's a given by them. It's so much a given that they don't even mention it. All right? They use the shelo b'shtar and the shtar and the shelo b'shtar to refer to an unsecured loan and an oral loan. Yeah, but that's a totally different subject. Yeah, let's not go there. I am not going to. The Gemara supports. Didn't I threaten you before? Don't go there. Right? The Gemara supports this latter view. By the way, Jonathan was asking about Yovel, and it's not talking about Yovel here. And I don't remember what we learned about Yovel, so we'll just hold that till the rabbi gets back. Tana Kabasi, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. A brisa was taught, confirming the understanding of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. All right, so now we're going to try and find some support for that, for the Israeli Amoraim. I guess Yerushalmi. Shtar chov mishamit. The lenders relinquish a loan that if recorded is a note of indebtedness. Im yesh bo achrayas nechosim. Wait. No. Shtar chov mishamit. The lender relinquishes a loan even if recorded in a note of indebtedness. Makes that statement. Let's learn more. But if there's a provision for a lien on real property in the note, eno meshamet, then the loan, he does not relinquish the loan. Okay, so that's the last part we said of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and was actually the first part we said of Rav and Shmuel, that if you had land backing, that it wasn't mishamit, it didn't break Shemitah's destroying of the loan give back. The Gemara cites a second brisa to the same effect. Tanya Idach, it was to another brisa, Siem lo sada echas behalvaso, If the borrower delineated one specific field for the lender to collect this payment for his loan, Eino Mishemet, the lender does not relinquish the loan, which means that it's good. So let's say we had Ruvain Shimon. Shimon is penny poor at the moment, cash poor, but he owns 100 acres. And he says, I need to borrow, and each acre is worth $100. And he says to Ruvain, lend me $100. And I'll tell you what, acre number 38, all right, is yours. I'm securing the loan with that. All right. It's let's say we won't get into any questions. It's a bordering acre. He can get to it with no problem. He doesn't have to have a path, go to it, this and that. It's a corner acre. All right. Well, it's a corner, might be payers. It's a side acre. All right. It's what do you call the seats in a football game where you're right there on the sideline seats, whatever. All right. The lender does not relinquish this loan. Why? Because he's got it guaranteed by land. The Gemara relates an incident pertaining to this matter. So now let's see a real life incident. Sorry, first the Gemara brings a Mishnah, then the Gemara brings a Brisa, then the Gemara says, oh, now let's tell a story where it really happened. Krive de Rav Asi Havalei Hahu Shtara. A relative of Rav Asi was a creditor who held a certain note of indebtedness against a borrower. The Havaksi Bey Achrayas Nechasim, in which was written a provision for the lien on real property. All right, which we know is okay. Also, Lakami de Rav Asi. He came before Rav Asi, this relative. Amalei Mishamit Oane Mishamit. He says, does the lender relinquish such a loan in the Shemitah year, or does he not relinquish it? All right. Amalei, Rav Asi said to him, Eina Mishamit. He doesn't relinquish the loan. All right. Why? Because it's guaranteed by the land. All right. Shvaki Basel Kami Rabbi Yochanan. So he left Rav Asi, and then he came in front of Rabbi Yochanan, and he asked Rabbi Yochanan the same question. He says, Amalei Mishamit. The Rabbi Yochanan says he does relinquish the loan. Now, remember, we just said a little back that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both said that if he had a secured loan, they didn't even have to mention it, the loan was secured. Shemitah wouldn't be mishamet the loan. Shemitah would not nullify the loan. And he's telling the guy, guess what? It's mishamet. All right? So there's a problem. He says he does relinquish the loan. Lay mishamet. Also, Rav Asi Lakami to Rav Yochanan. Rav Asi then came back before Rav Yochanan, Amalei, and asked him, Mishamet or Mishamet, make up your mind. Does a lender relinquish such a loan, or does he not relinquish a loan? Amalei Mishamet. He said Mishamet. This is a real problem. He says, wait. Rav Asi asked Rav Yochanan, but master, you already said that he doesn't relinquish the loan up above. All right, I read the same thing twice. Rav Yochanan Amalei. So Rav Yochanan answers, V'chi mipnei anu medami nase mase. He says, wait a minute. Just because we're imagining this is the law. Remember, this is similar to Daf Yomi is not a halacha shir. So just because we think this is the law, shall we rule and practice accordingly? Amalei Rav Asi asked him, Tanya kavase demar. But surely a brisa was taught in accordance with the opinion of the master. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan answered him. He says, yeah. So, and it was Rav Asi saying, yeah, but we brought a brisa that agreed with you, or there exists a brisa that agrees with you. So, why do you change? He says, maybe that brisa, Dilma, Beis Shammai, perhaps that brisa follows the view of Beis Shammai, Likbas Kegavoy Dame, who says, this is Beis Shammai, who we don't hold by, that a note which stands to be collected is legally deemed as if it had already been collected. And that's why the brisa rules that Shemitah does not cancel such a loan. All right. So what he's saying here is that the concept that having a piece of land. Excuse me, you don't have the piece of land, but you have this note that says you could potentially have this piece of land if he doesn't pay, since it's potentially yours. I say it cancels according to Beis Shammai. But he is also saying, but that only holds according to Beis Shammai. We may not hold by Beis Shammai. So when I said that, I was saying it because it might be true, but Beis Shammai. In the other place, when I said the opposite, is because I was thinking like Beis Hillel, because Daf Yomi is not a Gemara shir, and I'm thinking out both halacha shir and what I say. Yeah, the way I teach it might not be Gemara shir. Yeah, all right. And I'm thinking out what the possibilities are. All right. You still have your question, or you forgot it already? Talk loud. And didn't he go back and ask Rabbi Yochanan also? Oh, he never actually asked Rabbi Yochanan. Oh, we know he never asked for race Lakish. Yeah, it's just they're just bringing the. You might think that race Lakish is going to argue on this because Rabbi Yochanan and race Lakish always argue. So they saw it right away. Look, race Lakish agrees with this. Let's just continue Rabbi Yochanan. Gotcha. Okay, we can go further. Good. Tznan Hasam. We learned there in the Mishnah. Hamabes chavero mazal mashkan. One who lends money to his fellow on collateral. V'amoshe shtaris lebeistin. And one who submits his notes of indebtedness to the court, ein mishamtin. That is now relinquished in Shemitah. Why is it now relinquished in Shemitah? We're not mentioning land at all. This seems to initially go back against everything we've learned in the Gemara. And simply the answer is, you don't need land if the guy's giving you collateral. You don't need land if Basin is already what do you call it, has the notes from the guy, because Basin is already administering it. In other words, you've bypassed everything because you're already at third base, ready to go into home plate. So what are you worried about first base and second base? You already hit a triple, or you stole two bases. The Gemara, in this case, you didn't steal. The Gemara discusses the rationale for these rulings of the Mishnah. Bishlomo Moshe Shtaros Levestin. Now it's understandable that when one submits his notes to the court, that does not one who submits his notes to the court does not relinquish those debts, the tafsilo based in, because the court holds them. All right. How could you relinquish something you've just handed them to the court? The court has it. Guess what? You ain't getting it back unless you pay off your debt. Malva or mashka my timer. But what's the reason that one who loans on collateral does not relinquish that debt? Okay, so I give you this trophy. Not a trophy. I'm just doing that because I don't know what happened to our buddy there, the paparazzi. Where are you? Yes, I give you this trophy. All right. No, take it back. You have a trophy, a real gold trophy. I have money. I loan you this money. You say, okay, I will pay it back. But in the meantime, hold this gold trophy, the value of the money, all right? And you'll give it back to me when I pay you. So you have nothing to worry about, all right? So they say, what's the reason that one who lends on collateral doesn't relinquish this debt? Why is it that when Shemitah comes, all right, this debt is not canceled? Guess why? I'm owning a gold trophy, Bubala. I got paid if I need to. All right. So why do we want to relinquish the debt? Don't you want your gold trophy back? Don't I really want my money back? No, I got the gold. I'll sell it. I'll melt it. I'll get money. This, that. But the point is, I already have a value in my hand. Since I have a value in my hand, Shemitah can't do anything. Can't touch me. It's okay. The Gemara answers, you can't touch it. Amar Rava Mishim the toughest lay. Rava said because the lender holds it. that is the collateral. Thus, it's as if he has already collected his debt. Exactly what we just said. At least I just said. Abaye questions Rabba's explanation. Amalei Abaye. By the way, I just want to thank Jeff Gassner, who's not here today, because since I use the electronic Gemara, I had to borrow his Gemara before Shabbos, and Xerox, the Gemara in Aramaic, and all the translations in English, which was about this many pages. And then I was reading them over. That was my Shabbos activity. So,
Thank you, Jeff Gassner.
yes. All right. And I did return the Gemara to him. Right. Amalei Abaye. Abaye said, what? I gave him back his Gemara before Shabbos. Abaye, you mean didn't give him Kalara in the meantime? Yeah. No, my word was good enough for him.
So you weren't?
No. And I never took the Hippocratic oath either. I took the Maimonidean oath. Amalei Abaye. Abaye said to Rava, Elamiata Hilvo Vadora V'chatzero V'tafi Slay. But accordingly, in a case where one lent the borrower money, is a new case and lives in the borrower's courtyard. All right. So now let's make this as a new scenario. Reuven loans money to Shimon. Shimon, what do you call it, doesn't have land. So he puts up his tent in Reuven's courtyard. All right. And thus holds it, the property, borrow money and lives, one lent to borrow money and lives. Oh, no. Now Reuven goes and lives, couch surfs in Shimon's house. All right. He goes into the borrower's courtyard and thus holds it, meaning the property of the debtor. All right. Yeah, he's on the couch. All right. He's holding that. Is that considered a mashkan? Is that considered a collateral? Would it also be so that he does not relinquish that debt in Shemitah? This is certainly not the law. That's the question. Rava reformulates his explanation in a way that Abaye's question is no longer applicable. In other words, this was really not a good question. So Abaye will repeat his statement. Amalei, Rava said to him, Shani Mashkan, the Kani Leim the Rabbi Yitzchak. The case of a movable collateral is different because the lender acquired it based on the teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak. Now we're going to learn the Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Minayin leba'al chav shekonin mashkan. For where can it be derived that the creditor immediately acquires the collateral that he holds as security? Shinama ulachat tiyet tzedakah. For it's stated in the Torah, for you it shall be deemed a charitable act. Eno kona tzedakah minayin. If you don't acquire it, then how is it a tzedakah when you return it to him? In other words, you have to have something to give tzedakah. I can't say to you, Hilo, Hilo, why don't you give him $1 for tzedakah and then go take the credit for the tzedakah? I could give you $1 and say, be a shliach, give it to him, and both get credit. But I can't say to you, hey, you know what? Why don't you give tzedakah and I'm going to go get it? Maybe I get the credit of teaching you about tzedakah. Telling, like in Pirkei Avos, tell somebody to give, don't just give tzedakah, but tell people to give tzedakah. But I'm not going to get your dollar's credit. That's your dollar's credit, right? The only place someone gets the dollar's credit is if they're in Olam Haba and someone in this world gives $1 for that person. I forgot. I just remembered. I forgot to say at the beginning of this class. And thank you, Hashem, for letting us learn. Hopefully we're learning, for letting me teach. Hopefully I'm teaching. And in this chus, and a lot more chus, Mashiach come quickly. And anybody needs refuah shlema, should have a refuah shlema. And if there's people who need upstairs, in Olam Haba, schluss. They should get schluss from any learning we do on their behalf. Okay, continue. Sorry about that. Shows you how nervous I was at the beginning. I forgot the introduction. All right, stuck in nine. Why would the Torah deem it a charitable act? There was a pasuk. So from here we deduce that the creditor acquires the collateral. Again, to summarize, how do we know that the creditor actually acquires the gold, real gold trophy you gave me as collateral? Because when I give it back to you, it's called tzedakah. How could it be called tzedakah if I did not own it? Then I'm just returning something. It's not, it's just returning. But the fact that the Torah says, and you are doing tzedakah by it, that shows that you owned it, at least for the time being, in order to give it back, which you did because you got the money, and that was considered tzedakah. Yeah, except it's still got a hook, a string attached. The string is that if he pays you, he could have it back. So it is yours it's a conditional yours. It's like lulav. This is your lulav to bench. I'm giving it to you. I'm an ask that you turn it to me.
Say after a year, say, hey, what about the next year? 10 years go by. This collateral is what your house
No.
condition.
Yeah,
10 years.
well, we've gone through a Shemitah. The Shemitah didn't do anything because the Shemitah can't get rid of it. He can't take interest. So Daf Yomi's not a halacha shia. I don't know the answer. Probably have to go to Beis Din and say, Beis Din, hey, this guy just refuses. Who's going? The creditor is going to say, he refuses to pay me back. So he'll say, okay, keep the gold. It's yours. I mean, I don't know. What? I don't know at what point does the string expire and it becomes, and like you could ask the same question, what happens if God forbid that other person dies? All right. Can his heirs come to this guy and say, oh, we understand you have the gold bar that belongs to our father. Here's the $1,800, whatever for the ounce. All right, or whatever gold is worth, give us back the gold bar. I don't know. Again, I'm not a rabbi, and I don't remember these answers if we learn them, at least at this moment. So remember the questions so that you can ask Rav Smith when he comes back, since I don't remember the answers, right? We never knew the answers. We haven't learned the answers. The Gemara cites another Mishnah pertaining to Shemitah's cancellation of debts. Oh, at least we made finally to the second side. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll at least get through one of the two pages. If one repays a debt to his fellow, to his creditor in Shvius, the creditor must say to him, I relinquish the debt. So actually a statement must be made. And I have to say, could you pour me some water, please, in one of those cups? Thank you. The momalo afal pichein, and if the debtor replied, even so, that you relinquish the debt, I wish to return it to you. Yeah, thank you. What? It's water. Yes. No, that's seltzer. Water, like WAWE water, WADEDEW water. All right. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Baruch. Okay, let's go back to. So let's go. The debtor repays the debt. He wants to repay, and he repays the debt to the creditor. Shimon gives back the money to Ruvain. He has to say, I relinquish. Ruvain has to say, I relinquish the debt. And if the debtor replied, even so, I wish to return the money to you. In other words, let's say he's just thankful. It's the 10-year story. He's so thankful that you let him have this cash. Because with this cash advance, he's made in the interim $100,000 or $1,000,000. All right. That's why he never wanted to return the cash. He kept on repeating using the cash. You have money, you make money. He wasn't going to make any money with the gold. So he says, I'm happy. I'm just giving you back. Not as a return of the debt. That's how I'm understanding, he says. 1 second. I wish to return the money to Yakabo. Hey, Menu, the creditor may accept the money from him. He can accept it. V'zeh, Shenemar v'zeh dvar shmita, for this stated, and this is the statement of the relinquishment. Let me see. Although the simple rendering of the verse, and this is the matter of the relinquishment, the Torah's use of the word dvar, which has the root meaning of speaking, indicates a lender is obligated to say that he relinquishes the debt when the borrower comes to return it. So that's what it's all about. Because the pasuk in the Chumash says, and this is the matter of the Shemitah. Dvar Shemitah, because the word dvar for a matter also is the same as the word dibur, medaber, vayadaber, speaking. So we say he actually has to say it so. All right, he has to actually verbally say it. And if the creditor's debt accepts the creditor's statement of the relinquishment and does not say even so, but what if the guy says, oh, so what? This is phenomenal. Listen to this. The Gemara adds an addendum, Amar Rabba, the Tali lay Adama Haki. And if the debtor, meaning Shimon, Reuven, accepts the creditor's statement of relinquishment, all right, but the guy doesn't say even so, Reuven can hang him from a tree or otherwise subject him to rest until he says so. In other words, it's a strong statement. It's not really hanging from a tree. He's saying it's really important. The creditor has to force the debtor to carry out his original intent to repay the loan that was canceled by Shemitah. And the creditor had already fulfilled his obligation to repay it by making his statement of relinquishment. So it's a little confusing to me, but the point in here is that a statement has to be said. Eisvei Abaye. All right. Now, all right. That's interesting. Who are we just talking about above? Oh, Rabba. That was Rabba, Abaye's teacher. It wasn't unless it was Rabba who Abaye always learns with. Then it's talking, okay, third generation Amora, he was, but Rabba. But is this Rabba with a hey or Rabba with an aleph? How is it printed there? See, that doesn't help me. Oh, okay, so that's talking about Rabba, all right, which is with a hey, who is the teacher of Rabba and Abaye. So the first time when it brings a statement, it's bringing from the teacher Rabba and Eisvei Abaye, and this is strange because usually a student does not challenge a teacher. So he's challenging Rabba from a brisa. Yeah, but he's also learning from him. Yeah. All right. Eisvei Abaye. So Abaye challenged, or let's say asked Rabba from the following brisa. Kishehu notein lo, when he gives the money back to the creditor after Shemitah, al yomar lo b'chovi ani nasein lach. He should not say to him, I'm giving these monies to you in payment for my debt. Ela yomar lo, rather he should say to him, sheli hein mo'atan ani nasein lach. These monies are mine. In other words, assuming that the Shemitah nullified the debt. In that case, if assuming you didn't fulfill the criteria we had to have from before, and I'm giving them to you as a gift. Thus, we see that the return of money must be done as a gift from the borrower, not as repayment of the debt, albeit a voluntary repayment. But any coercion on the part of the lender would indicate that it is a repayment of the debt that he seeks. How then is it permitted for him to employ coercion? Just previously, we said, Rabbi said, the guy could say, I'll hang you from a tree. This and that. That's coercion. All right? He's kind of threatening him in his word. So how can you say that? So Amalei, Rabbi's answering, said to him, Tanele nami adama hachi. Hold on a second. Tanele nami adama hachi. Just as he coerces him. Well, I wonder, are we being recorded automatically? Or was I supposed to press a record button? It's automatic? If not, those of you who weren't here today will have to review on your own. The Gemara, sorry, I don't even see a place where it says record. Oh, record is blinking up and down, so it is recording. Okay, all right, well, yeah. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. All right. The Gemara answers, Amalei Rabba, Rabba said to him, Tane le nami ad haki. Just as he coerced him to say, even so, he coerces him to say, he can until he says, I'm giving you the money, I am giving the money to you as a gift. So it's one long coercion. Even so, and I'm giving it to you as a gift. The Gemara relates an incident. Let's go further on. Amar bar Marta, the who Abba bar man Yomi. We said this many times that he's named after his mother. I think his father wasn't Jewish or something, and his real name was Abba bar man Yomi. Hava Masik Bey Rabba Zuze. He owed money. Oh, wait. That's what's well. Hava Masik Bey Rabba Zuze. Who owed money? I guess he owed money. Somebody owed money to Rabba. Aisu Nihalei B'Shvis. He brought the monies to Rabba in Shvis during Shemitah. Amalei Meshametani. So Rabba said to him, I relinquished this debt. All right? Because that's what he's supposed to say. Right? Shemitah relinquishes the debt. All right. Sounds good. I think Rabbi Smith mentioned that once before. So Abba bar Marta took the monies and went on his way. Now, this is really a lesson in getting the hint, or how sharp are you, all right? So he said, I relinquish. It's like if you're going out to dinner with two couples, all right? I typically try and always pick up the tab. But let's say the first person says, let's say I say, I'm going to pick up the tab, because that's really what I want to do. And the other guy says, no, I'll pick up the tab. I'm supposed to, if I'm a mensch, say, no, I insist. I said I'll pick up the tab. But it's I say, oh, okay, you pay for the meal. That's what happened here, right? He says, I relinquished the debt, but he's being nice about it. All right. Shakline Basil, so Abba Bamata took the money and went on his way. He didn't give him back the money. He said, okay, forget about it. Asa Abaye asked Haba Atziv. Abaye came and to Rabba, and he saw the Rabba was seared. Amalei, Abaye, Amaya Tzibma. Abaye said to him, why is the master seared? Rabbi said to him, this is what happened. He told the story, proceeded to recount what had happened. Asel Lagabe. So Abaye apparently is a peacemaker here. All right. So Abaye went to Abba Barmata, Amalei, and said to him, Am taslei zuze lamar. Did you bring the money to the master? Amalei, he said, yeah, I did. Yes. Amalei, umaya malacha. He says, Abaye said to him, and what did he say to you when you returned the money? He says, Amalei Mishemini. He says, it's okay. I relinquished the debt. Amalei, Abaye said to him, Vamatlei, afa pechein. And did you say to him, even so, I'm going to give you the money? Amalei lo. Remember, we said you have to say that part. He says, no, I did not say. Amalei, Sabai said to him, Diamatle afa pechein. But if you would have said to him, even so, chazak shachlin hu minach, he would have taken the monies from you. In other words, had you done the right thing, said what you were supposed to say, he would have kept the money. All right, which would have been okay because he was entitled to the money had you said the right thing. He said, but because you didn't, he couldn't. And now he's out the money, and that's why he was sad. Even so, I want to give you the money, and said to him, Azawam Tenuninhu, thereupon Abba Barmata, so now he felt bad, went and brought the monies to Rabbah. And now he says the words, even so. In other words, even though I don't owe you the money anymore, all right, I'm still giving it to you. I want to give the money. Rabbah took the monies from him. Obviously, Rabbah really needed the money back. They were very good in those days of lending money. And they lent because they felt people's pains and needed money. But that didn't mean that they really were all so rich that they could give away their money. And they lent it. But I'm saying if the guys ain't going to give it back, he loses it.
Not get back what he borrowed.
Well, somebody who doesn't get the hint or says, oh, I'll go around and I'll borrow from all these people on the sixth year. I don't own any land. I'll borrow $100,000. All right. And I'll buy $100,000 car. So I don't own land, but I got a fancy car. All right. Lohabe Daise. No, he'll buy it in cryptocurrency. He'll put the money. So I don't even have any money. It doesn't exist. Right? So this rabbinical scholar did not have the sense to originally insist and say, even so, I want to give you the money. So really, this is a menschlichkeit Gemara. We just learned there. I'm sorry, I keep on having to drink. By the way, please in advance wish me a full shlema. The reason I lose my voice, I have to have surgery on my vocal cords. I finally found out why in August. So hopefully they remove what shouldn't be there, and that's why I tend to lose my voice after talking a lot.
Refuah Shalema.
Thank you very much. I'm Rabbi Yehuda. I'm Rabbi Nachman. Moshe just said Refuah Shlema. I'm so glad he said that. Two reasons. Number one, he said Refuah Shlema coming from Moshe. That's a big thing. Number two, no, I don't mean it that funny. I mean, because Moshe's got a lot of chutzim, right? The Torah is fixing Torahs. So he could fix my stuff. All right. Number two is that I wasn't sure anyone could still be listening, because you don't get feedback on this. Chaim's making the buzzer sound. That was funny, Chaim. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm Rav Nachman. Okay, I'm moving. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Nachman, Neman Adam Lamar, a person is relieved to say, Prusbo, Hayab Yadi Vavad Mimeni. This is very interesting. New concept. He's coming to collect from Basin, and he says, or collect from the guy, said, I had a Prusbo, but I lost it. All right, my timer. What's the reason that we believe him? It was why do Basin believe that he had the Prusbo and that he could still collect the money after Shemitah? All right. Kevan de Takina Rabbanan Prusbo, since the rabbis have instituted the writing of a Prusbo as a means of legally collecting a debt after the passage of the seventh year. Los Chabiketera Abel the Achil Isura, a person will not abandon that which is permissible and instead consume that which is prohibited. Meaning, once there's a tax exemption, people take the tax exemption. They don't say to their accountant, no, skip all the tax exemptions. I love the IRS. Give them everything they want. They want 33%. Give them 33%. Oh, you telling me I have enough tax exemptions to go down 25% or 20%? Give it. Nobody in their right mind does that. Same thing here. Once based and instituted a principle that there's a way out, that you don't lose your loan during Shemitah, even if you lost a piece of paper. But if you say, I had the piece of paper, we believe you had it, because certainly you would have gotten it. All right? You accidentally lost it, then we'll still believe you that you have it, and the person has to pay back. The Gemara relates. When creditors came before Rav after Shemitah, suing for repayment of their debts without producing a prosbul, Amalei, Rav would say to the creditor, Mide prosbul, hayalecha babad. Did you perhaps have a prosbul, but it was lost? This is interesting. He's giving a hint. We learned this once before with the shvuas, where you say, did you perhaps something, this and that? Remember in Soto, we learned that. I don't remember the exact case. Anybody remember what it? Yeah. With by Nidarim or by Soto? Oh, so it was by Nidarim, but we give these little hints to get them to say something. And this is the word Petach Picha Le'ilem. For cases such as an instance, open your mouth on behalf of the mute. It's very similar to what we say in by the four sons. As Pio or whatever, open his mouth and ask for him, Except here we're not really asking, we're hinting for him. All right? It's none. But we learn in the Mishnah, similarly a creditor who produces a note of indebtedness in the court to collect payment after Shvius. Ve'eni mo prosbo, but is not accompanied by a prosbo. Hare elo yiparu. These claimants cannot collect since they have not produced proof that the obligations are still due. So this apparently is bringing a different case that is contrary to what we just said, because here the guy, but it's not really the same case, because he's not saying I lost the prosbo. He just doesn't have, he's never mentioning that. So he probably never got a prosbo. So does this not prove that we do not believe a creditor when he claims he had the prosbo but lost it? The Gemara concedes that this Mishnah conflicts with the ruling of Rav and Rav Nachman, but answers, Tanai, this matter is subject to a dispute among Tanaim, and Rav Nachman follow the opinion of the sages recorded in the following brisa who disagree with this Mishnah. The Tanya, for was taught in the brisa, Matzi Shtar Chav, a creditor produces a note of indebtedness in the court after Shemitah. Tzarech shehei mo prisbo. He has to have a prisbo. It's not necessary that he has to have a prisbo. He only needs to claim that he originally had a prisbo, and that's sufficient. So if he makes the claim, that's fine. But if he didn't make the claim, it's not fine, according to Chachamim. The previous mission has discussed the rabbinic ordinances enacted to promote the welfare of the community. This mission, we're up to a new mission, introduces a discussion of such ordinances that pertain to Canaanite slaves. All right, so at the bottom of 37b. Eved shenishba ufto, if a Jew's, how do you pronounce it? Canaanite slave was taken captive, and other Jews ransomed him. All right, learn, it's just as much a mitzvah to ransom a fellow Jew as a fellow Jew's non-Jewish Canaanite slave. It's the same thing. We're going to learn this. If they ransomed him to be a slave, he is enslaved. All right? In other words, what are they ransoming for? To make him a free man or to go back to slavery? He says, and it's going to go in all the variations. If he's to be a free man, he's not enslaved. This is what it says the Reish at the beginning of the Mishnah. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, but the Rashbag says, Bein kach uvein kach yishtabed. Guess what? Either way, according to him, even though he was transferred to be a free man, he still goes back to slavery.
It's like kidnapped for money. Is that?
He was kidnapped.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily kidnapped for money. He was kidnapped.
Oh.
But to get him out,
Taken about,
we give him money and say, hey, you know what? You really get more out of this. We'll give you money. Give us this.
Right.
Yeah.
So, say I redeemed him and he's owned by this guy. He goes back to being.
This is the Gemara. Yeah. You're thinking well, because you're thinking ahead. The Gemara notes a difficulty with the rulings of the rabbis. But my askinan. Now, with what case are we dealing? Hold it. Hold on. My Gemara just jumped again. Hold on. We're Lamed Zion Amid Bays. I hate when this does that. Oh, that's Lamed Zion. It jumped back to Aleph. Just one moment. Okay, sorry about that. It's very touchy. I touch it and move. But my asking, what are we doing? Was the slave ransomed before or after? Whoops, the camera I just dropped. Sorry, Chaim. What was this slave ransomed before or after his master abandoned hope or recovering him? So that's the first question. Did the master who lose the slave have yesh? Did he say, I give up. I'm never we have this with money. When I lost the $10 bill in the ocean. All right. Do you automatically assume you never get it back? The guy who loses coins on Times Square, he's miyayish right away. He's despair. There's no way he's going to get it back. No, I don't have to do it. I didn't have time. I want to learn more. Now, what was the case we're dealing? Was the slave ransomed before or after his master abandoned hope of recovering him? If you say before abandonment, in other words, this owner was still hoping to get his slave back, then even if he was ransomed to be a free man, why is he not enslaved by his master? The master never gave up hope. So you got the mitzvah for freeing him. But he should go, I think you free him. Good, you got the mitzvah. The master gets his slave. Since the master did not abandon hope of recovering him, how can it be emancipated by the ransomer? Hold on. You would, because it was a mitzvah, and you wanted the mitzvah to free a slave. It's a mitzvah to free a slave, just as much as a mitzvah to free a Jewish person who's he freed them from the non-Jewish thieves. That's who he freed them from. There's a difference between freed from jail and being a free man. He's freed from the captors, but he's not a free man, right? But if you say, what if it happened after the story happened? They freed him after the owner had already said, he's not my slave. Then the rabbi's first ruling is difficult. Why was he sent back to be a slave again? How can the master reclaim the slave if he had already forfeited ownership by abandoning hope? Excellent question. The Gemara resolves the difficulty. Amar Abaye says, Lifnei years, in fact, before years, before abandonment, and the rabbi's ruling or explains as follows: Ulashum Eved Yishtabed LaRabba Rishon. If the slave was ransomed to be a slave, he is enslaved by his first master. So if the intent of the people who put up the money to ransom him and free him, all right, But the guy this was before Yeush, before the original owner, before Ruvain had the spear and gave up on getting him back. Then he goes back to him. L'shim ben Harim, but if they ransomed him to be a free man, lo yishtabed lo l'rabo rishon v'lo l'rabo sheni. According to this opinion, if he was ransomed to be free, he doesn't go back to Reuven, and he doesn't go back to anybody else who wants to enslave him, because he's no longer a Canaanite slave. He is now a free man. Why is this so? The Rabo Sheni Lo, he's not enslaved by his second master, the Halashim ben Harim Prake. For the ransom for the second man's, the second master in this case is the guy who put up the money to free him. Says he doesn't get him as a slave because he freed him to be a free man and never intended to possess him. The fact that he finds out that Reuven gave up on having him back as a slave doesn't mean he automatically can make him his slave, because that was not his intent. The Rabbi Rishon Namilo, and he's not enslaved even by his first master, even if the first master never had Yeush, lo prake. For if the first master would be permitted to enslave him, perhaps people might refrain from ransoming slaves. So they were worried that if it would always go back to the first master as a slave, the people wouldn't rush to do the mitzvah. All right? It's kind of like the prusbul. It wouldn't benefit the slave, but we're missing part of the story, which we're going to learn, because it wasn't, at this point, the slave was kidnapped. It appears to us so far, right? So it's not the slave's fault that he got caught. So now, Abai now explains the dissenting opinion of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rashbag. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Shimon Gamliel says, "Bein kach uvein kach," either way, whether or not the first owner, Reuven, had Yeush, had despair, or didn't, in either yishtabad, in either case, he's enslaved back to Reuven. Now listen why. Kasaber, Rav Shimon and Gamliel holds that we need not be concerned that people might refrain from ransoming slaves. Kishem shemitz liftas es b'nei charin. That's what I just said to the professor. Because just as there's a mitzvah to ransom free men, kach mitzvah liftas es havadim. It's also a mitzvah to ransom slaves. The Gemara presents a second resolution of the difficulty with the rabbi's ruling. Rabbi says, Le'alam la'achayish. Rabbi says, now this is Rabbi with an aleph. So this is Rabbi's student, Abaye's partner in learning, who he often disagrees with. Rabbi, and they grew up in the same house, I think. Rabbi Le'alam la'achayish. In fact, the Mishnah discusses a slave who was ransomed after abandonment. After the rabbi's rulings are explained as follows, and the rabbi's rulings are explained as follows, Ulashum eved yishtabed l'rabo sheni, and if the slave was ransomed to be a slave, he is enslaved by his second master. L'shum ben charim, and if he's ransomed to be a free man, lo yishtabed lo l'rabo rishon v'lo l'rabo sheni. He's not enslaved either by the first master or the second master. Why is this so? L'rabo sheni lo. Why is he not enslaved by the second master who put up the money to free him? Ta'alashim ben charim parke, because he ransomed him to be a free man. He never intended him to acquire him for himself. L'rabo rishon nami lo, and he's likewise not enslaved by the first master. Ta'ala achayesh hava, because the ransoming occurred after the abandonment. And the guy already gave up. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer ben kach yishtabed. He says, either way, this sounds familiar. Am I still going in order, or did we? Okay. Sometimes it jumps on me, and I think, all right. He is enslaved. Hold on. Kidechizkiah. This is important as a reason given by Chizkiah, because this is repeated a few times. Damar Chizkiah, well, Chizkiah said, Neimam ru ben kach uvein kach yishtabing. Why did the rabbi say, either way, whether the first owner, Ruvain, owner of the slave, had Yesh, despair that he won't come back, or didn't give up on his slave coming back, either way, he says that he's still enslaved by his first master. Why can't he be enslaved by first master after the master has abandoned hope for him? So let's see what Chizkiah says. Shilo ye ko echad v'echad holech umapel atzmo legayasus. It's a rabbinic ordinance so that each and every slave does not go and give himself up to the legions of bandits, umafki atzmo miyad rabo, and thereby remove himself from the dominion of his master. So what Chizkiah is saying, he's saying this guy has a slave master, Ruvain, that is so bad, he's beating him to make so much work. I mean, the fact is we have a lot of rules of what we can do and can't do. But he didn't like this guy. He didn't like the way he looked at him. He wasn't nice to him. This slave was an emotional kind of guy. He just didn't like his owners. He says, you know what? I'll go take a walk one day when he sends me somewhere. I'll go take a shortcut through the woods where those bad people are, and they'll kidnap me. And when they kidnap me, the Jews will be forced to redeem me. They'll redeem me as a free man, and I won't have to go back to this owner. And if redeem me as a slave, I'll go to the guy who redeems me. He's got to be better than the first guy, because can't get any worse than this way. All right, so that's Chizkiah's upshot. Meisvei. Come-
That's why you can go back.
Right, because otherwise they pull the shticks all the time. But that's Chizkiah's view. All right. Meisvei. The students challenge Rabba's explanation from a brisa. Amar Rabban ben Shimon Gamliel. All right, we're almost 7:30. We're still on the bottom of. Let me at least get page what? I didn't even finish 37. Let me try and finish 37. So 38 the rabbi have to. Amalei Rabbi, if he doesn't show up tomorrow, at least I learned to the right. But he should come back tomorrow. Please come back, Rabbi. Amalan Lahan Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Shimon Gamliel told the rabbis, Kishem Shemitzel if das Espenei Chorim. Just says there's a commandment to redeem freemen. Kach Mitzel if das es Havadim. So it's a mitzvah to ransom captive slaves. Bishlama Labaye Dama Lefnei Yeyish. Now it is well according to Abaye. I'm losing my voice. Who says that the Mishnah is discussing a slave ransom before abandonment? For Abaye explained that the reason for the rabbi's ruling that the slave is set free is that otherwise people might refrain from ransoming slaves. Hainu, the Kamah, the shame, accordingly is understood why Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel responded with just as. He argued that people will not refrain from ransoming slaves, for just as there's a mitzvah to ransom free men, so there's a mitzvah to ransom slaves. Ela Rabbah, Tamar Lacha Yesh, but according to Rabbah, who said after abandonment, Hai Kishem, what does just as mean? Rejoinder means. The reason Rav Shimon Gamliel disagrees with rabbis has nothing to do whether it is a mitzvah to ransom slaves, Mishum Chizkiyahu, rather it's because what Chizkiah said that he might allow himself to be a captive. Didn't I just read this? Am I reading the same thing over again? Amalach Rava, Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Lo haba yada my kamar rabbanan. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel did not know the precise meaning of what the rabbanan was saying. B'hachi kamar lahu, and accordingly he covered all the options by saying ilif na yeyish kamrinan. If you say it was before abandonment, so that people will not refrain from ransoming slaves. Hayinu Kishem, then he responded, just as there's an obligation to free men, so is an obligation uh, to free a slave. But if it's after abandonment, then he uses the Chizkiya's statement that the guy would run away. Rabba says that it's after abandonment by the second master. Rabba Shani Miman Kanihu, from whom did the second master acquire ownership? Mishabe, you must say from the captain. Shabe Gufe Mikane Le. The captain himself legally acquire ownership of the slave. In other words, when we said before that the second captor, that the man who paid to emancipate the slave could be now the owner of the slave, but he never really acquired ownership from those guys. All he did was free the slave from those guys. And the captor did acquire the slave in respect to the slave's work. I'm sorry, I'm discussing the wrong word, captor. The captor here is talking about the bad guys. They never really, did they acquire the slave, or did they just acquire the slave's work power? That's what the question is. The ransomer in turn acquired the slave from the captor. So that's kind of what's going on here. It's a little confusing me, but I'm losing my voice. The right of a captor to the labor of his slave is derived as follows. So where do we learn that the captor, not the guys who are buying it, but they got the right? The Amaresh Lakish, where do we learn that one Oved Kochavim can use the another Oved Kochavim for work? From the children of the sojourners who dealt with you in the land of Canaan. From them you may acquire slaves. You can acquire from them. In other words, the Jews can acquire from them, but not the non-Jews can acquire from them. Just a drop more on the top. We're at the top of 38. Below Hen Konim, but they can't. It says, and they can acquire from one another. Reish Lakish continues, Yacholo Yikno Zeh. It might be thought that the idolaters cannot acquire one another. Yacholo Yikno Zeh. It might be. How can you say it might be thought they can acquire? Amata lo haim. Wait, implying that in fact they can. Amata lo haim konim zezer. But you just said the idolaters cannot acquire one from another. In other words, if you make that statement, you're saying that well maybe they can. It says hachi kama. This is what he meant to say. Below haim konim zemizel legufo. We have proven that idolaters cannot acquire one from another in respect to the slave's person. So I might think that they cannot acquire from one from the other as far as using him for his labor. Amat kavachoma, upon consideration, however, you should say that this right of acquisition may be derived by a kavachomer as follows. Oved kochavim Yisrael kona. If an idolater can acquire a Jew for his labor, Oved kochavim lo kol shekain, is not certain that an idolater cannot acquire a fellow idolater for labor. In other words, a Jew can work for a guy. The guy's not owning the Jew, but he's paying for his labor. So, but if he can acquire him for his labor, he certainly can acquire him for. He can certainly acquire another idolater or another Oved Kochavim for his labor's worth. I want to end with this story. We'll get to it. But say that this is not so, because when the idolater acquires a fellow idolater by purchasing him with money, all right, so he's saying, yeah, he could maybe acquire him with money, but he can't acquire him with chazaka. All right, 1 second. Reish Lakish did not teach, however, that an idolater can acquire a fellow idolater by means of a proprietary act. Thus, propriety act means a chazaka. Thus, our original question returns: from where is it derived that a captor acquires ownership of the rights of the works of his captive? And we'll finish with this. The Gemara derives the law by analogy. It's going to give the story of Ammon and Moab and Sichon. He says, Amar of Papa. Rav Papa said, Ammon and Moab tira b'Sichon. The portions of the territories of Ammon and Moab were purified by Sichon's conquest, preparing them to be occupied by the Jewish people. Remember, when the Jews traveled, the tribes traveled through Ammon and Moab, we were told, you cannot acquire Ammon and Moab. Leave them alone. All right? But just as Sichon went later and conquered Ammon and Moab. And we went later and conquered Sichon. So when we conquered Sichon, we got Ammon and Moab because they were the property of Sichon. That's what's just as Sichon acquired those lands by capture. So when the idolater acquired ownership of land or slaves by capture, the Gemara argues that this derivation is insufficient, and we'll let the rabbi continue there because I have no more voice. All right?
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
what-
thank you so much. Really good,
All
Rennie.
right.
Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Rennie. Thank
See
you.
ya. Take care.
Rennie,
Bye-bye.
Shkoyach. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rennie. Refuah Shalema.
there's someone on. Oh, it's my father. Hi, Todd.